This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by MagnaGrip. Eliminate diesel exhaust fumes from inside the fire station with a MagnaGrip exhaust removal system. Learn more at magnagrip.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I will be your host. Like it or not, I'm still here. Over 100 podcasts, and hopefully we're going strong and stronger. It's going to be a little scary today because I am alone. Janelle, the commander, who is the editor-in-chief in Fire Rescue One, and really the glue that holds this whole program together. She's letting us go solo today, and I think it's because she trusts our guests. And I have had the privilege of meeting our guests numerous times, and every time I do, I just walk away going, this is one of the most interesting people in the fire service that I think a lot of people don't know about. And I'm talking about Chuck Ryan from Tucson, Arizona. He's the chief in Tucson. First of all, Chief, welcome. How you doing?
Good, man. Good to see you again, Zam.
Well, you and I meet in some pretty unique places, elevators. I had to follow you on a webinar, a live webinar. You know, we were doing some stuff for the state of Montana, and I had to follow you in a presentation and also at a conference. And, you know, I ran into you randomly at the Women in Fire conference. We had some great conversations there. And again, the reason I say you're one of the most interesting people in the fire service is that you're the fire chief in Tucson. You've been there since 2019. You're a Metro Chiefs board member. You previously served, though, on the East Coast at Fairfax County, Virginia, where you led the Business Services Bureau. I think you were in training. You also led some things with administration over there. You're an instructor at the National Fire Academy, a graduate of the EFO program, a graduate of a naval postgraduate school for the Center of Homeland Defense and Security's Executive Leadership Program. And then you were also a lawyer. And then as I talked to you and started to do a little more research, you were a 9/11 responder at the Pentagon. You've had some really interesting calls at Tucson. And then I also met you at Science to the Station's Health and Wellness Conference talking about all this different wellness initiative things that you're involved with. So I don't even know where to begin with you because first of all, I'm a little intimidated because here you are with a ton of experience. And, you know, and I kind of knew you for an incident that happened at Tucson, and we'll get into that a little bit. But what is going on with Tucson right now, and what different programs do you have going? And just start there, and we'll start branching off because there's a lot of different places we can go.
Sure. So we have some good stuff going on here. You know, a lot of people forget that I kid around. Chief Mike Duran in Phoenix is a very, very good professional and personal friend. I always kid around and say people forget there's actually another major city in the state of Arizona.
Right.
And it begins with a T, and it's Tucson. We are the 33rd largest city in the United States. I'm super honored and humbled to have been selected to lead this department. I'm only the second fire chief to come from outside the department since it started in 1881. I've got over 645 super dedicated men and women on the front lines every day, and a very lean but efficient professional staff of about 50 folks. And we run about 104,000 calls for service every year, and it keeps going up. You know, it's a busy place. We're home to the University of Arizona, which brings about 40 to 45,000 students every year. Here it's the land grant college in the state. We've got Raytheon Missiles and Defense, have a huge operation here, about 10,000 employees, building nuclear missiles. I don't know how many fire chiefs get to say they have nuclear missiles.
Yeah. I mean, aren't there areas where you're like, hey, the fire department can't come back here kind of thing?
Right.
Like, yeah.
And we're I won't say we're a border city. We're not like El Paso or some others, but we are 58 miles from the border with Mexico. And so we face some challenges there as well. As a near border city, we're the first major city on the stop on I-19 north from the Nogales port of entry. So a lot is going on here all the time. And one of the things that I'll tell you that I don't like to say too much, but I'm really proud that we were able to accomplish here. When I got to Tucson, we were down about 36 positions, running with about 36 vacancies, and at that time we only had 632 authorized positions. So we were in a rough spot, and we've been able to navigate it to a point where we got a safer grant to boost our head count to 645, and we're well staffed right now. We need more, like everybody does, right? City of this size should have about 720 firefighters on the street. So we're still working towards that. It's a work in progress. Nothing happens overnight, but we're getting there. So a lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah, and you work with U of A. You do some work with Dr. Jeff Burgess.
Yes.
When I first met you, I think we were at Science to the Stations, and you guys have a great relationship there. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Dr. Burgess and his team, they are truly amazing. They are obviously highly intelligent people, but they can communicate with firefighters, right? And Dr. Burgess is very, very passionate about firefighter health and wellness, and specifically research on cancer and its impact on firefighters. And for those that don't know, Jeff was he's one of the most humble guys you'll meet, but Jeff was instrumental. Without him, it wouldn't have happened when IARC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, just last year classified the actual occupation of firefighting as a known human carcinogen. I mean, that's unbelievable. And it's a testament to the research. And I got to admit, I'm super proud. I came to this organization. His work was already underway, started by other folks. And it's just expanded further and further. And so we have a captain in our department who's now basically detailed on a full-time assignment to work with Jeff, and they go all over the country onboarding firefighters into the firefighter cancer research program, working on PFAS mitigation, mitigating PFAS levels in our bloodstream, all the women's health issues. I mean, it's really branched out. When I got here, I got to be honest, I was stunned. Coming from the East Coast to a department where the very first, I get out and I go to fires, right? I'm still a firefighter at heart, and I don't like to be anchored behind a desk at headquarters. And so, when my very first fire that I went to here, when I walked past the first engine company, and the engineer is at the panel wearing an SCBA on air,
right?
And I'm like, whoa.
That took me for a little bit of a loss too. Because they're not even in the fire. This is somebody pumping the fire. Their SCBA is on. They're breathing off of that SCBA, and it's because Dr. Burgess found, it's based off of his research, right? He found even at that panel, the levels of contaminants are very extreme. Correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. Not just from the fires, but from the diesel exhaust from the apparatus. Even though we put our diesel exhaust obviously on the opposite side of the pump panel, but there's still very, very high levels of carcinogens. And so as a result of that, we don't mandate it. It's not, you don't have to do it, but the people do it. And that's super impressive to me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because the numbers and the data are in their face right? When professors and doctors walk into a room and look at a group of firefighters, they basically say, you're dumb if you're walking anywhere around the fireground without an SCBA on, right? Active SCBA mask and breathing air. And because you came from a different culture, what made you open your eyes to that?
And I'll say this, Fairfax County has always had a very strong safety and wellness culture. I started there in January of 1994 was my first step into the recruit academy as a career firefighter. And it was always about doing the job, but doing it as safely as possible. And, I have a personal tie to this. I am an occupational cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2017. It was caught super, super early through our very robust occupational physical, annual occupational physical back there, and treated. And I'm, 7 years, almost 8 years to the good now. And so it's important to me. And I look back, I think back on my career and the number of times that I did some stupid shit, frankly. Sorry to be so blunt about it.
No, but I think all of us, and our listeners out there probably,
yeah. If you're a firefighter, if you were a firefighter in the 90s and early 2000s, and it was no big. The fire's out, you go off air, right? Even if there's still smoke in the structure. And yeah, so it got me. It got me, and sadly it's getting more and more of our members at a much younger age, and thankfully we're detecting it sooner. So I don't know how I can say it more strongly than we provide all of the safety equipment to make a incredibly dangerous job as safe as it possibly can be. And when I see firefighters, frankly, just being negligent, neglecting to use that safety gear, it just raises the hackles on the back of my neck, because
Yeah.
nobody can say they don't know now, because we didn't know 30 years ago, right? We thought so, but we didn't know. Now we know, and there's no excuse other than machismo, bravado, ignorance. I don't know what it would be, but I'm pretty adamant about it, and I'm really thankful to work for a department where our company officers, and we don't have to tell our firefighters this, they know it, right? And I think it's because we're so close to the work with Dr. Burgess. I just wish everybody else would be as diligent.
Yeah, and by close, like, he's sometimes on scene, I believe,
Oh
correct?
yeah.
He was saying, right?
Oh,
So when you have one of the world's, leading researchers walking around a fire scene, well, not that close, because he doesn't want to get into contaminants, but he's saying, "Hey, this is what's out here, you guys. It's your choice."
yeah.
And I wanted to highlight that, because it was one of the eye-opening things that I heard at the Science of the Station conference was, man, if you guys are finding that at the panel, we got to be more cognizant and diligent about putting that SCBA on all the way through overhaul, all the way through, until you're going through decon.
Yeah.
And it's because of the work that you're doing with your department there.
Yeah.
And something else too that we've talked about off screen a little bit, that is another concern to the fire service. And this is just the broad range of things that chiefs and administrators behind the scenes have to do for us, by the way. So I'm talking to the front lawn trucky guys that don't think chiefs do anything. Sometimes they don't, right? I'm not going to condone that, but there's other instances like yourself, Chief Ryan here, who then is trying to get legislature or trying to get a code to understand about, we had talked about single stairway
Oh yeah.
egress, right?
Yeah.
And you said you got the University of Arizona, you got 40,000 students who have, I don't know how many different thousands of electronics and batteries. And now they're trying to pass some codes that say you only need one means of egress. Dig into that a little bit, how scary that can be for our sort of fire service.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So it's not just the students, right? So the data doesn't lie about where a fire problem is in a major city, right? It affects multiple housing more frequently than single family housing. The data does not lie.
Yep.
So that being said, when and I have good friends here in the building industry, and we have healthy conversations about this stuff. When somebody is talking about building a 3, 4, 5, 6-story multifamily occupancy with a single stairwell, a single means of ingress and egress, that is a huge problem. Because and candidly, selfishly, I'm going to talk about my city, right? We are not a wealthy community, right? We have a lot of people living at and below the poverty line. So a lot of this housing effort is designed to make housing more affordable, to get people off the streets and into some sort of housing. All very noble, right? All important, but to sacrifice life safety just to have more people in a structure is not the answer, in my opinion. And because it puts not only the occupants at risk, it puts us at risk, right? It puts us, and with the e-mobility devices and the push for clean energy and clean transit and everything else, and people, invariably they lose the charger that came with their e-bike, or they get it off Craigslist, and they have to buy a charger off of Amazon, and it's not blah blah blah, right? That's when these problems happen. And FDNY has had some really tragic outcomes with some of this stuff, and it plays out again and again. And Europe and London Fire Brigade's been dealing with this for a long time. It's like, have we not learned this lesson? And I know there are cities that have single stairwell multifamily occupancies. New York City is one of them. City of Seattle is one of them. I believe City of Portland is one of them. I'm not a fan, and it jeopardizes lives. Even if you sprinkler the common stairwell, that doesn't solve the problem.
No.
Because all it takes is somebody's e-scooter to start overheating, and what are they going to do if they can get to it before it goes up in flames? They're going to heave it out of their apartment, and where's it going to go? Into that common stairwell, and then anybody above them is trapped.
Yep.
So
and those gases, right?
Yeah.
Now we have to understand that the gases are what's killing people as well. It's not just the flame; it's the gases and the byproduct and the off gassing of all of these different things as they burn. So yeah, sprinkler might put it out, but there's so many different off gases that are already in the air and contaminants. And for us, a lot of policy have we work our policy off of 2 stairwells, right? Our high-rise policies are a lot of times off of you have an egress stairwell and or a rescue stairwell and then an attack stairwell.
Mhm.
Well, so that means changing a ton of tactics. And you're going up when a ton of people are going down. That's going to restrict our response and water on the fire. And, and to say, I have to do my Chief Waldo here. When I was talking to Chief Waldo about these, like, Zam, we're talking about one way in and one way out of a multi-family. That's just crazy. That's crazy. That means people can't get out. That's where everybody's bikes are. That's where their scooters are. Yeah. So that's my Josh Waldo. And you're right.
That's good. That's good. You should, if you only had an orange Tennessee Vols hat on.
Yeah, I had and had boots on. I don't have boots on either, but that's one of his major concerns. And at the time, I was like, okay. And as I've been digging, I've heard this numerous times, and that's why I think it's important for the frontline guy like me or the truck guy to understand. Hey, when this is brought up, we should pay attention to this because it affects operations. It affects how we have to respond to that. And then of course there's always this, right, Chief? And this is a great segue into a tragic situation that you've had to deal with at Tucson. Is we always say it's never going to happen. And you have one of the stories there. I've heard it 3 or 4 times. And I think it's something that the fire service needs to know about because there's so many different safety things we can take from it. And if you don't mind digging into that a little bit about the tragedies that occurred a couple years ago there.
Yeah. On July 18th of 2021, Sunday afternoon here in Tucson, our crews were dispatched for a house fire in an area town that's not unfamiliar to Tucson Fire and Tucson Police. Lower income, lower middle income area. And without any warning, our first in engine and truck were less than a mile, maybe a mile away from, and they were in the house and got to the scene very quickly. The ladder company was behind the engine going into the neighborhood, and the ladder captain pointed out to the engine captain and said, "Hey, you got a vehicle that's trailing you at a high rate of speed, right on your tail, just like the FYI kind of thing." Mm-hmm. And the engine captain acknowledged it. He marked on scene, gave a great size up. It was a working incident. Neighbors were there trying, they had the green line in service trying to put the fire out. And this cat jumps out of his car and starts shooting at his neighbors who were trying to help him, and engages and starts shooting at our crew, both the ladder and the engine company. And unfortunately, our ladder captain took a bullet to his right arm. What happened was the guy had shot and killed one of the neighbors who was putting the fire out, trying to put the fire out. Mm-hmm. Walked around to the front of the engine because the captain had just finished giving his size up report, and the captain saw him walk up and raised the pistol would have been right at the captain's face. And whether the gun jammed or he decided not to shoot, who knows what happened, but the shooter then he did not fire from that position. He walked over to the driver's side, to the officer's door, and raised the pistol and fired a shot through the window just as the captain kind of, raised his arm to duck to some sort of protection, and caught him in the backside of his upper arm on his right arm. The shooter then went and started shooting at the ladder crew, and everybody scattered. The engine driver, the captain bailed out. The firefighters had bailed out. The engine driver took off. Folks took refuge in neighbors' houses as this guy continued shooting. And so what I just want to hit a quick rewind. What we learned after the event or during the event, but prior to him engaging our crews with gunfire, was that he had fired into a AMR ambulance that just happened to be staged for a call nearby. They were not associated with the fire. They were just in a parking lot at a park. And he walked up to the ambulance, to the AMR ambulance. And AMR provides BLS transport for us here, and knocked on the window and opened fire through the window, mortally wounding the driver of the ambulance and striking the other EMT in the passenger seat twice. And then he drove off, and that's when he started following our trucks into the scene. After he finishes his shooting spree with our folks, he tries to flee the scene. At this point, Tucson police is responding, and he deliberately rams a TPD cruiser, which that accident took place literally directly in front of where we had additional apparatus staged, level 1 staging for this fire. But he and the officer exchanged gunfire. It's like the Wild West, man. Like,
Yeah.
you can't make this up. And the officer neutralized him with a couple of very well placed shots about 125 yards away.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was really it was really challenging, and the outcome of it, sadly, was our captain ultimately wound up having to retire, took a disability retirement.
But he also he saved some people there, because he got on the radio right away and said, "Do not come here. This scene is under." I believe he said it's under attack, or
we're being shot at. Yeah, he was very clear despite the duress.
Yes.
And he was super understated. He said, I've been shot. I think it's superficial. I'm in this house. I don't know where my crew is. I mean, it's one of those things as a fire chief, I'm listening to this on the radio and in my car on the way to the scene at this point, and just like, this is not happening. This is crazy. But the communications were, despite the nature of the event, our crew, our captains did an amazing job with very clear, concise communications. Our battalion chief, our incident commander, who was a captain acting up as a BC, ran a super, super clean incident scene. I mean, it was the worst of circumstances handled the best of ways, I could say it.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you have a structure fire. Now you have a multi-casualty, and you have an unsafe scene, right? So now you're having an active shooter. You have multiple people injured. So you're trying to think about, all right, mass casualty incident. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, there still is a structure fire going on that we still need to deal with. So as you're driving to this, right, like you're saying, how is this even real? Kind of take us through some of the things you thought, and if you could do it again, what kind of things could you transfer to us listening about, like lessons for us to take from this?
Yeah, going there, all I was concerned about was the safety of our people, primarily. Getting the fire out. I knew at that point that the officer, that the shooter had been neutralized. There was no real indicator that there would be another threat, right? I mean, you always have to operate in that mindset, but there was no other threat. So at that point, it was just really doing what we could to take care of our people, knowing we had, someone with serious injuries, serious physical injuries, and then dealing with the downstream, mental trauma, frankly, effects of that. Because that's not, you don't get in this job to get shot at. That's just not part of the game.
No.
And so the takeaways, in the media, I have a real good relationship with the media here. I'm lucky as a fire chief to have that, because there are some that don't share that. But the media, they have to ask their questions, and one of the first questions they ask is, what could you have done differently? And I'm like, I don't know what we would have done differently. We responded to a house fire, and some guy came out of the blue and started shooting. It could happen anytime, anywhere. And you really don't need to do a lot of Google searching to see it's happening much more frequently, unfortunately. And other than the situational awareness piece from the response side of it. That's the takeaway, right? Being situationally aware. And I think our guys are, our crews were, right? The ladder captain, wisely pointed out that this was taking place. Is that an uncommon thing that on a Sunday afternoon that somebody's racing? For all we know, the assumption is you assume the good, right? Hey, somebody called this cat and said, hey man, your house is on fire. And he's just coming back to his house.
Yep.
You don't expect this, but you kind of have to at this point. On the other side of it, administratively, we learned some things that could be done better. The timing, I'm going to take a little bit of shelter in the timing of this. It was a Sunday afternoon in the middle of summer. Everybody's off, away, on vacation, whatever.
People acting up, you're saying, left and right because
vacations
are occurring, right? I think we can all relate to this.
Yeah. And so getting the right resources to where the people were for, peer operational support, logistics support. We had to bring people in just to get clean clothes to folks who had bloodied clothes. And the other piece of it we learned, it was a learning point for me for sure, was that so it's a crime scene, right? Yeah, we have our fire, but this is now a crime scene. This is a homicide, multiple shooting. So the police they own that piece of it. And having a good relationship as a fire chief with your police chief goes a long way. And for whatever reason, the gentleman who was the police chief at the time here in Tucson, we did not have the best relationship. We didn't have a bad relationship. It just wasn't great. And there were a lot of social pressures, I think, on him at that time, because think of the timing of this, right? This is
2021. Tough time.
So we're still in that era. This is the shooter was a man of color, now killed by the police. Obviously, he engaged in gunfire, so you start the party, your guests are going to come, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he was under a lot of pressure, and I get that. Here in Arizona, and it exists in other states too. If somebody's a witness to a violent crime that results in a homicide, the police can actually detain you for up to 24 hours to get your statement. That I had not known that previously, and so we could have navigated that part of it better, because obviously the media was all over this. Families are worried. Everybody wants information right now, and we don't even have all the information. And the police, there's a reason for why they do that, right? They want somebody's story before it gets clouded by whatever else, hearing I saw this, I saw that. And then people start to think they remember something that they never actually saw, kind of stuff. So I understand and respect that, but that really posed some challenges for us. And as a fire chief, and rightfully so, took it on the chin a little bit for that. Like we just did not handle that side of it as well as we probably could have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So starting those conversations, I was thinking about, all right, so if there's a chief listening to this, make sure you ask those questions to PD. Hey, how are we going to handle a situation if this, not of maybe that caliber, but something similar that happens to it?
Yeah.
I think for a firefighter officer listening to this, don't be afraid to get on the radio and say, hey, this doesn't look right. Just an FYI, let's just make a note of this and make everybody aware of it. And as a firefighter too, you still have to have that situational awareness, and it sounds like in this case, a lot of people did, right? They saw a gun, they heard gunfire, right? People took cover, tried to take care of each other.
Yep.
I've heard this a couple of times, and each time there's a new detail that I pick up on. And, and I try to picture myself as that captain, because that's my seat now. How am I going to respond? Is my radio usage good? Can I control myself on that? Can I control my inflection enough to get that communication out there? These are all things we can take from this, because we can't keep saying it's never going to happen, because I read about it and hopefully that's one of the reasons why I love doing this, is I can highlight these stories, because, just when you say that'll never happen, or here it is. And, right. And so I appreciate you talking about it. And let me ask then too on this, like, this affects you as much as it affects anyone that's been on that scene. How is everybody doing past that? How are you? And what lessons did you learn on the recovery side of this?
You know, I'm doing okay. You know, I still think about it. That day comes around, and you know, it's human nature, right? It's a anniversary or a remembrance date or whatever, and I think about that, and I get I'm thankful to be asked to present on this incident. You know, I just a couple of weeks ago I was in Galveston, Texas, and presented this. That I was asked to come present this to a group of emergency managers in Southeast Texas, and I had somebody come up to me afterward. It was interesting. He's actually a vendor at the show, and he came up to me afterward, and he's with a local hospital mental health behavioral health system in the Houston Galveston area. And he came up and he said, you know, he goes, he's a doctor, and he said, I can tell that still bothers you. And I said, yeah, it does. It's
Mhm.
you know, it's one of the, when you hear your people in peril like that, I mean, it's horrifying. It really is. And because you can't do anything about it. You're not
Yeah.
there. You can't change what's happening, and you're listening to it in real time, if not observing it in real time. And that's really hard. So, but thank you. I'm doing okay. I think the folks are doing okay. We have a really good partnership also with the University of Arizona for behavioral health support. Amazing psychologist, Dr. Patricia Haynes. She's awesome. She works very closely with our safety and wellness division on the pure operational support stuff and whatnot. And so, and she provides services to our folks. So we're good. We're
Yeah.
good. But it took a while to get there. To be honest, it took a while to get back to good, as they say.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an important part about this too, is that there's a human side, right? And firefighters, I think we're really good at, and we're getting better at checking on ourselves. But there's also sometimes that bridge between administration and what the front line, and sometimes there's angst. And what I hate to hear about, or I hate to have happen, is that, right, you're human, chief. Like you have sons, you have a daughter, you have family, right? We have to remember that, as I think, as frontline, sometimes we're really easy at picking and saying chiefs aren't doing this and chiefs aren't doing that, and right. And I get it. Some cultures are like, there's reason for that, but then
Yep.
we also have to remember, look, there's a human side to this, and I think that's a really important thing. Like, let's take politics off of the table. Let's take a badge away, and you and I are just having a conversation, and I think we have to remember that.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes in a snap. Visit magnagrip.com to download MagnaGrip's free grant guide with expert tips to solidify a grant for essential safety equipment, such as MagnaGrip's exhaust removal systems. That's magnagrip.com to download the free guide.
But that brings me to another point too that we talked about, is in Fairfax, you love the operation side. You still love going to fires.
Yeah.
Just, can you give insight to the truck guy about what kind of challenges you face that we may not know?
Sure. I assume the good in everybody, right? But we all know there's bad apples in every place, right?
Every organization, every place has them.
Yeah.
We can agree. Yep.
So as the fire chief, I always tell people, you're serving three communities. You're serving your people, right? Your department. You're serving the community, the folks that you swear to protect, and then you're serving the elected and appointed officials in the city, right? And so as the fire chief, you have to kind of navigate all three of those, and you have to be strategic. And I get it. Like, I always tell people, I didn't fall out of the sky into this position. I wasn't nothing before a fire chief. I worked my way up through every promoted rank.
Yeah.
And
You were also a lawyer, by the way.
yeah, but
He's a pretty smart guy here.
I'll be honest. I was one of those, like, they don't understand, blah, blah, blah. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I always like to say, give a little grace, right? Like, nobody comes to work. No fire chief comes to work and say, how can I mess with my people today? How can I make their lives uncomfortable and miserable today? We're always trying to do the right thing. And that sometimes it takes longer than people want, right? In Tucson, we need 720 firefighters. I'm not going to get to hire 80 people tomorrow. It's just not going to happen, right? Doesn't mean I don't keep pushing nudging the ball, pushing that rock up the hill. I push the rock up the hill a little bit every day. And when my city manager or my mayor and council get tired of hearing me say that, they'll tell me. They haven't told me yet, but I'll still keep saying it, right? Because it's the truth. And as long as people know and have faith that their fire chief is advocating for them to serve them best and those other two communities, because the money's got to come from somewhere, and you don't get money by making enemies at City Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of politics involved, and you have to be, as a fire chief, if you're not comfortable being political, not being a politician, being political and diplomatic, then you're
strategic,
not gonna succeed.
Right?
You have to know when to push and when to ease off the gas, when to take and when to give. And so it's nuanced, and the larger the organization, the more nuanced it is. So the takeaway is, have some faith, give some grace to your fire chief, because they're not going to, especially in a labor state, right? I mean, I have a great relationship with Local 479 here, and we work on stuff together, and the members want, and I understand that, and I want it for them too. But boy, it takes money, and money takes time, and the fire chief doesn't always get to decide how the money gets spent.
Yeah. What's the one takeaway you want every firefighter to know? Like, how can I help the chief? Like, what's one way you think, Frontline can help administration better?
Be positive, right? Like, I'm not saying be a Pollyanna and everything's rainbows and unicorns, right? I get it. Every day's, but I was always of the mindset, man, even the worst day in the firehouse was better than the best day anywhere else.
Yeah.
And
go work somewhere else first and then come back to the firehouse, right?
Yeah. And I had that, I kind of had that benefit, right? Because I got in the fire service. I was 31 when I got in Recruit Academy. I was working as an attorney for 7 years full time. And I was like, I didn't hate it. I got tired of doing it. I got tired of the routine. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the work I was engaged in. I was doing aviation litigation. It was great stuff. But it was the same thing. It was like Groundhog Day. And I'm like, I just needed more. And I still stay in contact with, some of the senior partner from the firm I was with in the DC, Virginia area. And like, he was the one that said, hey, go do this. I was going to go do it anyway. And he let me practice law part-time for 17 years almost.
Oh my God. You're the only person I think I've met. Maybe Kurt Verone, Chief Verone is the only other person I know that, I'm a firefighter by day and a lawyer kind of on the side, you know, like that. That's a unique thing to say. So, yeah.
So, I guess just be positive. Like, don't get caught up in, and we have a recruit class in, and I actually go talk with them about a week before they graduate, and it's coming up. And I always tell them, like, don't get caught in the vortex of despair. You get a choice every day. And I love this. Frank, I don't know if you've had Frank Viscuso on before or not, but if you ever get a chance to have Frank on, you should. Or bring him back.
He's on the list. Yep.
Okay. Yep. Because I love his philosophy. He tells people very straightforward, like only a Jersey guy can, right? Like, hey, you got a bad attitude. You want to kick rocks every day. Check that shit at the door. You're coming to work, especially if you're a leader, right? If you're if you're a lieutenant or a captain or whatever rank structure, if you're the boss of the truck, like, act like a leader. Don't act like a spoiled kid in the back of a classroom throwing spitballs at the girl up front. It's like, I don't understand. I struggle with people who have a negative attitude every single day, and they're in the minority, right? I get that, but they have the potential to do so much damage within an organization. And like I said, nothing's perfect. Nothing's ever great. I have bad days too. I get it.
Yeah.
But man, oh man. And the other thing I'd say is complain up. Don't complain down.
Yeah.
Right? Complain up. Firefighters don't have typically anybody to complain down to. Maybe the rookie, right? The boot. But beyond that, that's why the chain of command exists. That's, but don't bring a problem without a solution.
Yeah.
Right. Don't bring a problem without a solution, because otherwise it's just complaining. And if you act like that at home, you're probably going to find yourself living alone very quickly.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's I think one thing, my dad was always saying is like, hey, yeah, you can have that complaint, but what's your solution for it? But let's do the other one though. So what's something that every chief can do to aid and contribute to the positivity of the field? Because I think like that's where some organizations start to drift, right? Where they're trying to be positive, but they're not seeing something from administration, right? What's your piece of advice for administration to help support a positive culture, positive attitude?
I got a few of them for you. First off,
Yes.
always give people the why. Always, always give the why. They may not like what you say, they may not agree with your perspective, but give them your why. Why are we making this change? Why are we moving in this direction? Why is city government spending money this way instead of, giving 80% of the budget to public safety? Whatever it may be, give them the why, because then you've informed people. They may, like I said, they may disagree, which is cool. We can agree to disagree, but that's what it is. And some things are not in the fire chief's control. The other thing is be visible, right? Get out and be visible. The larger the organization, the harder it is. And I would be lying to you if I said I was out in the stations every day. I just don't have that luxury. I wish I did, but I do go to incident scenes. I do get out to the stations. I try to over communicate. I do. As a matter of fact, I do a thing called the monthly minute video, and I can't not talk for less than a minute. So it typically runs like 2, but
I can relate. I
I do one every month. It's just a quick blurb. It may or may not be about the fire department, and then I do quarterly update videos. We do an annual captain town hall over 2 days on a shift friendly format. We bring the captains in. So it's like, be visible to your people and go out and when able, meet them where they are, right? Meet the workers where they're working, because the firefighters are not working here at the head shed. They're not at headquarters. And I'm lucky here in Tucson, our downtown fire station 1 is connected to our headquarters building. So when I need to get away from the craziness of admin, I walk over into the kitchen over there and I get a cup of coffee and I talk to firefighters like a firefighter. And just be real with people, right? Just be real with people. And the other thing is, one last thing I'll say, if you go to a station, don't bring an entourage with you, right? You don't need to bring your assistant chiefs and your deputy chiefs and your chief of staff. Just go and talk to people, and be real, be honest. And I think a lot of fire chiefs fall prey to not doing that. Some are probably uncomfortable, but most probably just they run out of time. And it's like, hey, right? The Resilient 50, right? You gotta plug. You gotta make the time.
Love it. Yeah.
You have to make the time. And I think it's incumbent on me to do that until the day I'm no longer the fire chief here. That's just how I feel about it.
And I think, like, right now, if there's frontline people like myself listening, that's music to their ears, because that's honestly, that's what we want. We just want to know that we're heard, I think. And I think the word transparency has come up in so many conversations with successful chiefs. And, what firefighters want, a survey, which we do on Fire Rescue One, I think that's one of the biggest things, is that in order to trust leadership, we need to know what you're thinking, what you're doing, and why. And, you and I we were kind of raised, like I go back to my dad's stories where he used to say, he used to call, right? Hey, Aaron, come here. And you go, why? And they'd say, 'cause I said so.
Yeah.
Right. And we did it. But I think this generation, and there's nothing against it, they have so much information, and I think they're probably a little smarter than I was too.
Oh yeah.
Right. They need to know why. Like, why am I coming there? Right. Especially, like, can I take something with me to get me there faster or cooler? What am I going to do when I get there? And I just think we need to understand that people really want to know that why. So it's music to my ears, and hopefully it resonates with our listeners, just about, all these are just the basics of communication.
Oh yeah. 100%.
And you've had so much education, from being a lawyer to doing, your EFO. I could keep going on, but I love giving these nuggets of information to people, because that's what we're about, right? Being usable, actionable with some of this stuff. If you could go through your whole career again, give me 3 things you want everyone to, maybe do within their career, or you would have done different.
Sure. The number one thing I tell people I would have done differently, if I could if I get blessed to have a do-over in a reincarnated life as a firefighter, I would become a paramedic. I would go to paramedic school. I love firefighting. It is my number one passion, but the reality is 80% of what we do is EMS.
Yeah.
And if you're in it to really help people, being a good paramedic is the best way to do that. So that's what I do that over. The second thing I would say I would do over, or do a little bit differently is kind of the stuff I talked about, is a little bit of more emotional intelligence, at a younger age, or a more junior stage in my career, and not necessarily think that everybody that's at the rank of deputy chief and higher is out to get me every single day.
Yeah. Maybe every other day, but not every day.
Not every day. Yeah. They take days off too. Yeah. And then the third thing I'd say I would have done differently, and I know this is hard, especially for younger guys and gals, and if they've got young families and stuff, but try to be engaged in your community, in the community where you're working. When I was in Fairfax, over half our workforce lived outside the county. It was just too expensive. I mean, there's places like San Jose, California. People can't afford to live in the city on a firefighter salary, right?
Yeah.
But when you have time, and so I get that, and we have the same thing here. The city of Tucson's become kind of expensive due to the mass exportation of people from California buying up property here. But if you're a firefighter and you're working in a neighborhood, like, I don't know, try to find a way just to connect with where you're serving. Like, it's great if you do things at home, like if you're 2 counties away or whatever, but if you can find even 1 hour, 2 hours a month to do something, because that will give you a broader, I think, understanding. It would have given me a broader understanding of what the real needs are, right? Because I always say this: everybody in the fire service, from the biggest fire dog to the budding doctor or paramedic, is a community risk reduction technician. Like, we should all be focusing on how, if you think about what you said in your interview and the oath you took, it's to save lives and protect property. And what's the best way to do that than to engage in community risk reduction? And that's more than hanging smoke detectors or smoke alarms or CO alarms. It's about knowing what, on a micro level in your first due area, what are the risks your community has? Doesn't mean you have to fix them all. Maybe just identify them and work with a community group a little bit to have a better understanding of that, and maybe make it a little bit better, kind of pay it forward, even if you do it for one other person.
Yeah. It's the term. I think it's community risk reduction. Just isn't a sassy, sexy kind of thing.
No, it's not.
Let's come up with a different term here. Come on, Chief. I'm going to throw you right here. Spotlights. What's a more sexy term we could come up with for the field?
Fire and life safety control. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something. Maybe we come up with a cool acronym. I don't know.
Yeah. FLSC, something. I think part of it is that we got to remarket some of these things, because we got to be more cool, especially if we do like a 1 minute with Samuel L. Jackson's voice on it. Be like,
oh yeah,
firefighters need to work. Yeah. But all great things. I as you were going through them, I think, that you talked about emotional intelligence. Like, what's your definition of it, and why does every firefighter or chief need to understand what that means?
Yeah. So, look, I was born and raised in New York. I grew up in New York. So I'm an Irish Catholic kid from a middle class New York neighborhood. And as my wife likes to tell me, and sometimes my Irish gets up a little too fast, and I inherited that from my dad. But I just think, to me, emotional intelligence is having the ability to take in information, even if it's information you don't like that you're hearing, and not immediately react to it, right? Rather than lose your cool, rather than roll your eyes, rather than push away from whatever the visceral reaction would be, just listen, dispassionately listen, and take a breath, and think about, before you say a word, think about the words you're going to say and what that could go, what that means, how that's going to, impact the relationship you have with the person you're listening to, what the downstream effect is. I mean, people lose their jobs over this stuff,
Yeah.
because they're not emotionally intelligent. They just lose their, what. And being emotionally intelligent is having the ability to calmly and dispassionately listen to something that's not pleasant to you and then react in a professional way that won't cost you your job, won't cost your department money, whatever it may be, won't cost you a relationship, whatever.
Yeah. It doesn't provoke a negative response either, right? It may, but make sure it's on a calmer, in a calmer capacity. Same thing with hitting send on an email or a social post, right?
Yeah.
Take a breath,
Yeah.
understand really what are you trying to, because I think the other part of that too is, when you're not taking that, as you said, as your Irish gets a little too, hot or comes on too quickly, you're not in your right mindset either. So a lot of times the message that you're trying to send isn't going to be received anyways. Right. And and that's the basics of communications, message means received, acknowledged. So, all great stuff. And as you said, take a breath. This is a part of the program. We do take a breath, but we put you on the hot seat. You have a lot of stories, and we didn't even dig into the Pentagon. So I saved that for another, hopefully, episode too. But what's one of the wildest fire station or fire service moments that you can share? What's something maybe on the lighter side that you'll always remember?
Let's see. Okay, I got one for you. This is a Fairfax story, and the statute of limitations is passed on this.
Yes.
And
Nice.
a lot of the people involved have since retired or moved on. They're outside.
Plus, you're an attorney, so you won't get yourself in trouble. I can be safe with this one.
But one of the stations that I was assigned to when I was when I first promoted, back there, the first level of supervision is lieutenant. So, and lieutenants typically went to the truck companies. Captains, when you promoted to captain, you got an engine company, but typically you lieutenants were on the trucks. And the station I was at had a fireboat, our version of a fireboat. It had a portion of the Potomac River was in our first due. And so we needed to have some level of proficiency on this boat. I think it was like a 30-foot or 25-foot Boston whaler. Nice little thing, twin outboard engine, fast. I have no boating experience whatsoever. What I know about
maritime
boats,
skills,
they're fun to ski behind, and as long as they belong to somebody else, they're great. So here I am. We're out on this boat, and I'm supposed to be like in charge of this thing to some degree, not operating it. And I'm in the back of the boat, and the guy who's the boat operator says, "Hey, you ready?" We pulled out of the no wake area onto the river, and he said, "You ready to go?" And I'm like, "Yeah, ready to go." Well, he mashes the throttles forward, and yours truly goes flipping out of the back into the Potomac River. The water was really cold. Potomac River water, not the cleanest back then. That was, yeah. And for like 2 minutes, I don't think they realized, because I'm just floating out there and they're driving away.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Well, you know what? If you want to know if you're a good officer or not,
yeah,
they came back and got you. So they're right.
They did come back. Yeah,
they did come back.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the scene. Well, this is I'm a movie guy, so Step Brothers. It reminds me of the scene where they just kind of kick you out a little bit of the boat. That's funny. So for probably the longest 2 minutes of your fire career was the waiting in the water to see, are they going to come back? And what's going to be the response, right?
I mean, I know how to swim. I could have made it to shore, but I thought this is really going to be a difficult one to explain.
Only if there were cameras back then, right?
Oh man.
Well, that's so far good story. We're getting some good ones out of this question. I'm loving that question. Second one is
that in a long time.
See, good. We got you to smile. That's all we're trying to do here. If you weren't a firefighter, what would you be doing? Now, you already have you did the lawyer thing, so I mean, you can go back to that, but
admittedly, I'm an aviation geek, and I have a pilot's license, although I haven't flown now in many years. To be a pilot would be cool, a commercial airline pilot.
Yeah. What did you start flying when you were a chief, or what just brought that on?
No, when I was an attorney. So I was working for a firm when I first started practicing law after getting out of law school. I got hired by a firm in Denver, and and they did a lot of aviation litigation defense work in the Rocky Mountain West. And I thought, well, might as well get my pilot's license. So I did. And
Cool.
my single engine, and I was working on my instrument rating, and then just never completed it. Moved to the East Coast, got hired by a law firm there. And, it got to the point of, I enjoyed flying, but it got to the point where I was just like a weekend warrior, kind of boring a hole in the sky every Saturday, spending a lot of money. It was much more expensive in the DC area to rent an airplane. And so I just stopped. So, but if I had, that's the one career I would have, if not the fire service, then that.
Yeah. Retirement. When you retire, maybe you get back at it, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Rise,
Maybe.
you have kids and family all over the country. So, maybe that's an option too. So,
Yeah.
What's one piece of information that you want every firefighter to know and take action on?
We have to go back to the very beginning of our conversation, for firefighters to understand the health risk of this job, not let it deter them from doing the job, but really use everything we provide you, everything your department, not fire chiefs, your department, your city, your district, whatever, whoever you work for, if you're in a volunteer org, it doesn't matter. Like wear your seatbelt all the time. We see too many firefighters getting killed for not wearing a seatbelt. Like, that's crazy to me in this day and age. And your protective clothing, and take care of it and clean it. And, we know too much now to not act properly, really.
Yeah.
Because it's, to me, and this is going to rub some people the wrong way, but that's okay. It's intensely selfish to not do it, right? Because even if you don't have a partner or a spouse, there's somebody out there who cares about you. And, that's a pretty crappy thing to do to somebody else, to be so callous as to not take care of yourself when the tools are provided for you to do that. We all say, and I say, professionalism in the fire service has nothing to do with a paycheck. It's all about behavior and attitude. And you want to be considered a professional, then we need to act like professionals.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you're on call paid or volunteer, whatever. Right?
Yep. 100%.
We had numerous guests on that say, your health affects me on the fireground.
Right.
Right. And your actions then in reducing your own risk affect me as well. And then it goes down to my families and your families and everyone else is involved. And, there's a lot in the military will say, my family is depending upon your level of competency.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying here is my family is depending on your health as well. And that's a real deep thought, but it's a great one. I think people need to grasp that concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so then on that, take us home with the final question. Is we're all about being better, and you've given us so many different things, but personally, what are you doing to get better?
I believe in, it's kind of, the phrase gets a little overused, lifelong learning, but I'm a reader. When I don't, and typically, I'll be honest with you, I'm more of a listener than a reader now. I'm an audible person, but I do like to read, and I read a broad spectrum of stuff, man. I like books on leadership, on change management, on just different perspectives on things. I'm going to give a plug to a book that I thought was really interesting, and a lot of people don't like him, but Matthew McConaughey wrote a book called Green Lights.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great book, man. It's really, really good. That's a great one. I'm listening to one now that's not as well known. It's called The Comfort Crisis, and basically saying how as a society we've become so comfortable that when we meet some sort of adversity, we kind of crumble rather than rise to overcome it. And he analogizes it to the author analogizes it to a hunting trip in the I want to say the Alaskan outback, the above the Arctic Circle part of Alaska, where you're cut off from civilization for 30 days. You don't have cell service or anything else, and how you have to manage that, right? And there's people that live that way, and we've just become so comfortable. So I don't know. That's what I do. The takeaway is I like to read, and if not read, then I listen to a pretty wide variety of stuff.
Yeah, we have also When Janelle and I started this, we're both coming out of our comfort zones, and there's a little slogan we say is that great things never come from comfort zones.
Right on.
And I believe in that wholeheartedly, and that you should try to do something every single day to get out of that. And I think you're a firm believer of that as well. So, and continually learning, right? Like, man, you have all these, certifications, you have all these qualifications. So it's refreshing to hear you say, I'm not there yet. I'm continually trying to do something every single day.
Yeah.
Right. And read and develop. So,
and kind of, a little bit to what we were talking about prior to the program starting, when I transitioned out of, in Fairfax, when I promoted to assistant chief after spending my entire career in operations, right. And culminating with being the deputy chief of special operations and leading the USAR team and all that. I mean, when the fire chief said, hey, I want to appoint you to an assistant chief position, I was like, yes. And he said, in personnel services. And I was like,
oh,
right.
Yeah.
And because that was like, I did not get in the fire service to be HR or the discipline guy or whatever, you know what I mean? And so, and then from there, when the fire chief came in and said, and it was John Butler, who's the current fire chief in Fairfax still, said, I want you to transition over and run business services. It was like, okay, you hit me in the jaw. Now you're going to hit me in the gut. Like,
yeah, right. Your jaw's broken. Yeah.
Finance and IT. And oh boy. But embracing that, is and taking the time to learn from the people in those roles, especially civilian, non-sworn professionals. Because here I am, a commissioned civilian chief, and I'm dealing with a finance manager who's got a CPA way smarter than me. And I'm supposed to be telling her what to do? Like, no, that's not, and so, but being well-rounded, right? Take those opportunities to get a better rounding in the fire service, because the 911 stuff is super fun. And we're all adrenaline junkies at some level, but to the extent you don't even have, maybe not even change positions, right? Take a temporary stint to the training academy, or if you happen to get stuck on light duty, like, don't just say, oh, I just want to go to logistics and hang out all day. Like, do something, get a different skill set, take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Because you might learn something.
Right. And that's transferred in, you had mentioned that. You said, hey, that groomed me for what I'm doing now. That helped you get through, obviously some of the hardships that you've experienced as chief, and come out on the other side, thriving. So,
yep.
At the time, it didn't look like that was going to happen, right?
No,
as you're saying,
never would have seen it coming.
Yeah. Keep a positive outlook, and all that stuff comes into play. So
yes.
Awesome stuff, Chief. Thanks so much for the time.
Oh man, it's great to see you again.
It's good to see you. The different, nuggets of information for both the chief side and the fire side, to me, is what we're all about here. And so thanks so much for all that insight. And for our listening audience, if you're just listening to us on one of the podcast platforms, I highly encourage you to go over to our YouTube channel. I'd love to hear from the readers and from the listeners here. So you can email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. Love to hear if you think we're onto something or on something. Rate, review the show, and certainly share this one, because there's a lot of usable, tangible, actionable things that you can learn from this. Thank you, Chief, for all your insights. The biggest thing I could take is, you said, take a breath, work on some things that make you uncomfortable. Always try to continually learn, take action, always take action to improve your health and reduce your risks. And lastly, make sure you always wear your life jacket, right, Chief?
Yeah. I don't have to worry about that here too much.
No, but I love the story and how everything kind of plays into, just being human and being a better person. Yeah. And then, ultimately it comes down to learning something, doing something, and sharing something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.